What really strikes me is the conflict between how much the ecosystem could be relied, between the different hubs, and how big is the struggle to actually collaborate. Okay, so when you think of the financial opportunity here, both in terms of financial inclusion and in terms of innovation in the banking space, and of course the financial means of the whole community, you could think, oh, okay, it could be pretty easy here to make that leap, this innovation leap that would allow the whole region to thrive at the same time. So, as you ask, what strikes me is how scattered is the ecosystem here, whilst it could have a great interest and leverage in actually coming together. What is clear here is that there are, technology is like never a problem, okay? And there are gaps of opportunity in terms of business. Think of the remittances, think of financial inclusion, think of deepening the financial sector in terms of e-commerce payments and so forth. So digital asset management, and wealth management. So everything that has been thriving in fintech in the rest of the world is just not yet exactly very well developed here. So that's clearly the opportunity. The second opportunity is the fact that the large financial brands here, they are actually very wealthy. So, and thanks to that wealth, there is no, in some of the countries where this fintech innovation hasn't happened yet, one of the reasons is, yeah, but that's like innovation budget, or that's like a marketing budget, so, and sometimes even the whole resources that are interacting with startups are lacking funding, simply. Here is not the case. Here is more the case of funding is, hardly never a problem. It is more probably the lack of native competencies here. So, and I was talking earlier, so in 2017 alone, I've been speaking in conferences in Muscat, Doha, Riyadh, Dubai, and I was saying, okay, there is clearly a need here to bring if not advice, but simply stories from abroad to inspire people locally, okay? Because even if, and you know that well, sometimes where there are local people telling the story seems less true because they seem to have a vested interest, right? So I think that cross-pollination between countries in the region and between the rest of the world at the region, it would be great to happen. I don't think that there is anything that has not been done in other parts of the world that cannot be replicated here, of course. And what I can tell you is what I saw working and what clearly doesn't work that well. So most of the financial institutions, they always start by sponsoring some accelerator or incubator, simply because the marketing department requires to associate the brand, exactly the brand of the bank, with some sort of innovation program, right? And it's fine. Only banks should not expect to have any return on investment in terms of economics, So that's not, you don't do this for the return on investment. Exactly. So you need to find the right measure, and the right measure is probably how many people in the bank can you expose to this innovation process. How many people in the bank can get exposed to the entrepreneurs and the new ideas? Because ultimately, these are the guys who are going to change the bank afterwards, okay? So first, I would say first statement, accelerators, incubators for banks are good in terms of marketing association, but they're not a return on investment. That has been clearly demonstrated. Absolutely, absolutely. Then there are banks who actually are taking fintech as a commercial opportunity to have a return on investment. And in this case, of course, you need to invest. And when you invest, you basically have three options. One is you take a strategically aligned investment fund, which is inside the bank. And that one has the clear mission to invest only in solutions that can be adopted by the bank itself as an improvement, or I would say innovation adjacency to the actual process or products. Okay. The second option is, okay, let's invest in an external fund, or like create a corporate venture capital. Doesn't really matter whether it is inside or outside. There are pro and cons in both cases. And the biggest challenge in this case is how can we align the return on investment perception in terms of cash and also brand with the fact that you might actually make investments in ideas that are amazing, but that the bank cannot adopt. Yeah. Okay, so there are startups who are objectively great in terms of team, idea, execution, market size, but the bank is simply not ready to embrace. So if you are a corporate venture capital and you invest in these startups, you have to have the mandate from the top level, which usually is the CEO, that gives the vision, to the rest of the organization, that that fund is also a return on investment platform. It's not simply an innovation platform, which is disguised as an investment vehicle. Okay. And the third option, which is actually something that only came out in the past, I would say 2 to 3 years, is more what we called a venture builder. The idea of, instead of investing in a company that is already structured, let's invest in an idea that solves a problem, and let's put the right resources around it together with the bank, so that that startup, this newly formed company, not only has the first customer and the funding guaranteed by the first customer, and then once the startup is built, you basically have two options. Either you take some sort of short period of exclusivity where the bank enjoys that technology first, and then it brings it to the market, or you bring it immediately to the market because you understand that you want to maximize the return and you want the startups to scale as fast as possible. This is actually something that we are doing with FintechStage as well. So on the top of doing ecosystem work, what we do as well is that we go and ask, what are the opportunities for other institutions to actually build a venture together, and then we pull together the right resources to make it happen. One of the things that is actually clear in terms of technology adoption is that the more the time passes, the shorter is the gap and the speed at which technology gets adopted. So if it took for example, if it took like a few years, for Europe, to get all this like digital banks movement, in place, right? For two different reasons. One, because, in UK, the regulator had first to lower the barriers to entry and build a new regulation for newcomers to enter the market. Then Europe did the same, but because Europe, you have the passporting license, so you operate in a country and you can sell all over Europe, so you needed to adjust. But since then, all of a sudden, there are digital banks popping up whenever the market needs to. Why? Because everyone knows which technology they need to use, everyone knows the market approach, everyone knows that the challenge is how to switch customers from, using data and actually consent on private data, say, for example, on my mobile subscription, gives opportunity for my digital bank who has this data to propose me a smarter plan right? So, and this openness of data together with the regulation basically has shortened, if you want to, the adoption of these new technologies. So, all this to say that I don't think that MENA has any shortage nor technology that is going to be more or less compelling compared with the rest of the world. I think that here, again, data, the availability of it, and how smart you manipulate them in order to build tailor-made financial services is going to be key. Financial inclusion and deepening the financial sector, and I'm talking about deepening the financial sector so that it is clear that we are not only talking about unbanked, but also about underbanked, is clearly a priority and an opportunity for the region. And then, of course, everyone asks how fast distributed ledgers are going to impact the financial system, but is that a question that I would ask specifically for this region? Maybe not. I think that what is going to be key, like in many places, is the deployment of these technologies only work when you build a common socket, you know? And that common socket could be the identity, could be distribution, could be the actual, and uniformized and standardized, interbank exchange system. It has to be something that it is greater than simply one bank adopting blockchain, for a given notarization of a service, for example, right? Because otherwise, it's not going to. You asked what is really going to have an impact, right? So, and the technologies that are going to have an impact are, as I said, what basically Swift managed to do, only with a more recent and compelling technology, if we talk about distributed ledgers. So create a standards on the top of which bank can differentiate their value proposition. Just that I'm very happy to be here, and the fact that for once you have like a 40 minutes presentation that is kind of a free flow and allows you to interact without slides. Well, of course it carries the risk for you to be deadly boring, but if you're not, you can interact with the audience in a way that is much more fruitful, because it is like a conversation that they feel that they can interrupt and interact with you in a much easier way.